Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, probably the most entertaining marketing podcast you're going to put in your ears. I'm Jared Walls, associate producer and Stirista's creative copy manager. The goal of this podcast is to chat with industry leaders to get their take on the current challenges of the market, but also have a little fun along the way. In this episode, Vincent and Ajay chat with Andrew Almendras, Vice President of Global Creative Marketing at Imax. He explores what the power of creativity, design, and storytelling look like in his role, and how that contributes to the brand's evolved identity. He and Vincent also share their experiences with the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. Ajay gets a custom pair of socks, and Vincent continues his nicknaming streak. Give it a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Vincent Petrofessa. That must mean one thing and one thing only. It is another episode of Stirista's The Marketing Stir. It is so good to be here. Hopefully, you're happy to hear from me. I don't know. Maybe you're not. If not, that's okay. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Stirista's The Marketing Stir. Who is Stirista? Really quick, we're an identity marketing company. We have our own business data, our own consumer data. People utilize that data to get more customers to market to, email marketing. If you have data that's fragmented, it's old, send it to us. We will append new attributes. We will enrich that data. We can model that data to get you new customers. We also have our own DSP. We could help execute media. Email me at vincent@stirista.com. That is how confident I am that we could help. I just gave the world, sort of the world, a great amount of you. Thank you so much for listening. My email address. It's a good day. And it's always a good day when I could introduce my co-host. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the CEO of Stirista. I call him the San Antonio sweetheart. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ajay Gupta. What's going on?
Oh, San Antonio sweetheart. I think I like the Slayer better.
I know you like the Slayer. I want to show people the soft side of you, AJ.
I try to hide it.
You do try to hide it, but just like there's America's sweetheart, I think Julia Roberts, you could say Tom Hanks, you're San Antonio sweetheart. I just came up with it. It's kind of tough coming up with new names every week, but I'm trying. I love it. Tell me what you think.
It's pretty. You know what? It actually goes with what I did yesterday. I wore a custom pair of socks.
And tell me about that custom pair of socks, AJ.
It showed up at my house one day, and without a name, it just had socks in it with my initials. So I was pretty excited and happy to receive it. And I thought maybe someone just a secret admirer had sent it to me. So that made me extra happy.
Well, in a way, I am a secret admirer, AJ. That gift was from me, as he now knows. I was waiting. When you send a gift and no one says thank you, and you're like, wait a minute, why didn't they say thank you? In his defense, he kind of, I don't think I put like a note in there. AJ, as our CEO, helped, facilitate an awesome partnership that we now have with a new client. So I said, let me up his game. Let me up his style game, as I'm always often doing. He's, made leaps and bounds from where he used to be. I'm kidding. Am I? Not really. But anyway, it's good to hear from you, AJ. And I'm excited today. I am excited for so many reasons today, not just because I'm class happiest 1996 Portchester High School, but no, it's because one of my favorite brands, can I call it a brand? It is a brand. It is a brand. It's one of those things where when you know that this brand is involved, it is special. It is special. I am talking about Imax, ladies and gentlemen. You know Imax, and I feel like Stirista is officially Imax certified. Now, this guest may say, hey, you can't use our name like that. How dare you? But I feel like we are now worthy, because when you go see a film that has IMAX stamped on it, the IMAX technology, the IMAX experience, it's going to be amazing. The sound is going to be amazing. The picture quality.
Well, I heard something about getting a free IMAX built into our office after this podcast, so I'm excited.
Yep. That's it. See, that is part of the package. I don't know if you agree to that. It's like, that would be great. Imagine like our meetings in IMAX. Who's going to not do business with us if our has like all of that backing and sound? Yeah, that would be amazing. And I am so happy to introduce our guest. Our guest is the Vice President of Global Creative Marketing. And this is not just, this creative team, award winners, ladies and gentlemen, 2019 Best Marketing Campaign, Brand Team of the Year, Best Branding. I'm embarrassing him because of all these amazing awards. He graciously is here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Andrew Almendras. What's going on, Andrew?
It's going well, and thank you, Vincent and AJ, for having me on and for that amazing. I think that's like an IMAX worthy introduction, and for me, I'll certify both of you guys as IMAX fans, as
Yes.
official IMAX fans. So amazing introduction, and thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, we are as well, Andrew. Thank you so much. The IMAX, just a powerful brand, and me being a huge movie fan, we've had guests on before. We've had Regal Cinemas on, and we've had people from Discovery Networks, just being lovers of film and television, and IMAX. It's really happy to have you here, and we were extra happy to have you in particular because of your role specifically as the global creative marketing, the vice president of global creative marketing. For those of you, tell us about your role within IMAX. If you could also, tell people who haven't heard of IMAX, I doubt there's anyone out there, but tell them about the IMAX, experience. And then I'd love to also understand how you got into that position. But let's start with your current role there.
Yeah, I mean, my role at IMAX is so unique. And I always say this every day with my team and with my colleagues and even friends. I say, I have the privilege to really bring to life the narrative that is IMAX. And, I think the power of creativity, the power of design, the power of storytelling, to be able to do that and to share that with, our customers in the greatest way possible is what I get to do day in and day out. So, my role at IMAX is, I've had the honor and the privilege to build an in-house creative team, which is, multidisciplinary. And we have the opportunity to work on everything from product launches to content campaigns to brand campaigns, everything where the brand comes to life and consumers and employees are able to interact with it. That's our job, is to bring it to life and bring it to the forefront.
And as far as IMAX, people understand the experience, the theaters. Elaborate a little bit more on IMAX as a whole.
Yeah, IMAX is such a unique brand. And, for many who may not know, what IMAX really stands for is Image Maximus. So really achieving the full potential, the full maximum of an immersive experience. So, we have 1,600 plus theaters around the world, right? We even have, as of late in Saudi Arabia. And so we are in 80 plus countries, which is amazing. And, for us, it's really, we are the global platform for, theatrical blockbusters. And, when I first got interviewed at IMAX and, people had asked me, what's your experience with IMAX? And I said, I think the most powerful thing about IMAX is, when you go into the IMAX experience and you sit there, and when I sat there and saw Free Solo, or when I sat there and saw Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan, you are fully immersed. And after you exit the theater, you are provoked to think in a different way. You are shaped to want to do something different. And you look at the world in a very different way. And that's what IMAX does to you, right? With our cameras, our projectors, our screens, the entire package, that's the IMAX experience.
I love that. And then Andrew, how did you get into the creative field, marketing? Was it a traditional path of like, I studied that at school, and, or was it a non-traditional path where I was like, I studied philosophy and here I am now?
I think that the most interesting thing I always tell people with marketing is the more you know, the more you're exposed to, the better you are at marketing. Because marketing to me is essentially, you know, understanding the world and understanding human beings. You know, a few of my colleagues a few years ago, they joked around, they said, "You're like Tiger Child." And I said, "What, Tiger Child?" And they said, "Yeah, IMAX's like first documentary, Tiger Child." I was the child who wanted to do everything growing up. And I think creativity always oozed out of me from, you know, building Legos and then Play-Doh, but it was never like you know, it was never the type of imaginary play that everyone else has where you're pretending you're playing with other people. I was constantly building things. So building things that were always functional. And I would say, you know, I would drive by the 134 freeway with my mom as a young kid, and I would look up at the Disney animation building. And I said, you know, someday I want to be in that building. And I'm like, what are they doing in that building? You know, what are those storyboards that they're building? I mean, a few years back, when I had the opportunity to actually go in there, you know, not working for Disney, but working for IMAX and living and breathing creativity, you know, I would say, you know, it's always been in me, this creativity. I've never understood how to unlock it. In school, I've always created these connections with things. I've always, you know, been involved in things that would ooze marketing, that would ooze creativity. And I would say, you know, coming here, I studied Spanish and international studies, and I lived in Spain for a year and managed to travel the world. So I think for me, it's not the traditional path. I think for me, getting to IMAX, I wanted to help grow a brand. And I wanted to help grow a brand that is authentic, that is ethical, a brand that that resonates with not just generations of the past, but the generations of the future.
Well, Andrew, I can tell you from personal experience as a movie lover, you know, it's almost like if the theater is good, you think, oh, this must be an IMAX. So it's kind of become synonymous with good movie experience, which is a great brand. But who do you guys market to? Who's kind of your target audience when you think about marketing at IMAX?
Yeah, you know, IMAX is a 50+ year brand, right? So we have gone through transformations and evolutions. We started off in the documentary space, right, with institutions. So here it's the California Science Center. There's also, you know, the Melbourne Museum. There's all of these, you know, several museums and institutions. So we started off within that space. So as the years have progressed through the decades, I would say audiences have evolved, right? It went from, you know, people within the educational space to then people, you know, within the blockbuster space. So as you know, the Marvels and the DC fans. And then now I think it's further evolving to even spanning beyond that. So I think, you know, it's always been about the core fangirl and fanboy. I would say now they've turned into fan men and women who have kids. And so I think there's, you know, when I first, you know, experienced IMAX, it was as a child going to the California Science Center. And I think today, you know, the audiences, the kids of today, they experience it watching their first, you know, superhero film. And then I think it'll continue to evolve. And I think our audience will always continue to broaden, especially from country to country.
And what's kind of the strategy that goes into deciding which movie theaters are going to offer an IMAX experience, or is there a discussion around what movies are going to be in IMAX?
Yeah, you know, I would say when IMAX was first founded, you know, in Expo 67, the entire intent was, how do you bring this experience to life and make it accessible? And I think, you know, I think there's, you know, there's an opportunity to just keep it exclusive. But I think the fact that we've blossomed and we've boomed globally, I think it really says a lot to the relevancy, right? So if there's people around who go, you know, I want to experience something like that. I want to be able to travel the world because IMAX transports me. I think that's number one. I think number two is, you know, areas where it's highly trafficked and sought after. And I think those are the areas. And, you know, if there's, areas throughout the world where we can bring these experiences to life, to communities and to, cities and countries where they're able to live for 2 hours in another space. That's really what we're looking for.
Andrew, because you've traveled yourself, you love to travel. Do you and the global impact and footprint that IMAX has, what stands out to you? Can you give some examples of like how other countries are, consuming movies, just some things about the creative aspects or marketing that is really different in other countries as compared to the US?
Yeah, I would say, I think first off with traveling, I always say that traveling is the closest thing to teleportation. I
Yep.
always say you get on a plane, you close your eyes, you wake up, you're in another time zone, you're in another country. And I think, with IMAX, I always say like, that is the closest thing to, transporting you into another world. In my travels, what I've learned is really human beings digest information in very different ways. When I was in Japan a few years ago, I met with our Japanese colleagues there, which was amazing because typically we only hear them on the phone. And I said, I'd like to hear more about, the advertisements here. I said, you constantly ask for more information or a lot more things on your posters. And they said, because Japanese consumers like all the information. They want to see all the information on a piece of advertisement so they can make a reasonable judgment or decision as to whether they want to buy into something, right? Whereas, I would say in the domestic marketplace, we look for puns and we look for double meanings and we look for punchy, copy similar to the UK. So it's very interesting in how you adjust things because just because it works in one market doesn't necessarily mean it works in another. And I think being a global company, I think that those are one of the, that's one of the challenges. But I think at the same time, I think it's one of the most amazing things because it's so diverse.
Yeah, and you hit on something there because a lot of times, especially visually, people want things simple, fast. You hear like attention spans or just a few seconds. And I wanted to get your advice, Andrew, on simplifying complicated ideas and messaging for visual promotion material in that case.
Yeah, I would say I think because we've seen so much, advertising has evolved, right? And I think even within the creative space, a lot of people who never thought as advertising as creative have actually understood that advertising is probably like the pinnacle moment of creativity meeting, masses and volume, right? From a consumer standpoint. And I would say, we tend to overcomplicate. And what advertising is and what creativity is really stripping out the layers and getting to the truth. What exactly are we trying to say to the consumer? They're human beings. A brand is also, in my opinion, a human being because there's always a CEO, right, behind it. There are people behind it who are bringing this brand to life, and there is a voice, there's a culture. So, I would always say strip it back, simplify it, and get to the core of what you're really trying to communicate, because you just need to speak in human speak at the end of the day.
Andrew, Regal Cinema, as Vincent mentioned, friend of the podcast, they've obviously been badly affected by the pandemic. Has IMAX been affected with the pandemic? How are you guys kind of working around it?
I think, there's things like this that happen where you don't really have any control, right? But I think moments like this in, a pandemic that doesn't happen very often, I think it provides every brand and every business an opportunity to really self-reflect and really self-reflect back to who we are, what we offer, and the problem that we're truly trying to solve, within the world. And I think, for IMAX, I think the thing that we look at within IMAX creative and also marketing is we go, what are we really trying to bring to our consumers? And I think what we try to bring to our customers and our consumers is the fact that human connectivity and being in this physical space where you can share a moment, where you can share an experience, where you can share these feelings and emotions is something so powerful that you can't get anywhere else. And, I think, I speak with my colleagues day in and day out on video chats. And I think we're all super, super excited to get back into theaters, obviously, once it's safe, and really experience that together and be able to have, in this world of disruption, right? You talked about it, Vincent. You're like, oh my gosh, like there's so much, happening, short form content, is to be able to sit in on a 2.5 hour film and just be with nothing interrupting you is something magical and something that you can't really find. It's very hard to find these days.
Yeah, for sure. I have two little kids, and one of the side effects of pandemic has been they grab their iPad and they can watch multiple shows. Well, the older one gets into longer content, but the smaller one is going through a lot of different shows, things that we'd have to wait for as children for every Sunday to come out or something. They have access to so much on their fingertips with this. Something about that shared movie going experience that I think is a very relevant part of our culture still. So we all look forward to getting back in the movie theaters. And so, what's been kind of on a personal note, what shows have you been watching? What's been interesting to you that's been out on TV?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I actually started, this is really funny because this is old, but I watched all of 6 Feet Under. And I hadn't watched 6 Feet Under I had never watched it actually. And I think going back to your question, Vincent, about how do you recommendations or advice on advertising or marketing is what 6 Feet Under really hits on is the fact that it gets to the truth. And it gets to the truth of like, there is death. And so what you need to do is just enjoy the time that you're here. And like, that is like the harsh reality, but it's also just a fact that there is death. So you enjoy the moment that you're here. And I think relating that back to the pandemic, it made me realize, I said, oh my gosh, well, how do you, day to day is really mundane in like reality, right? Like humans are made to be like mobile, we're mobile people. And you do like mundane things, right? You eat and you sleep and you do things like that. But how do you make those mundane things extremely exciting and extremely interesting? And I think, watching that, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's ways that I can like approach different things in life. And I said, how do I make mundane things that much more exciting?
No, I like that. Yeah, that's I've never heard that show described that way, but I like it. It's a great show, and the people don't realize Rainn Wilson, who later became Dwight from The Office, is in that show. What a great! I love that. One of the best. Did you get to the season finale of that show yet, Andrew?
I got to it.
Okay,
And,
that's probably one of the best
yeah.
finales of a show, I think, ever.
I agree. I mean, I think, and this goes back to, it's so relevant. Like you sit there and you go, yeah, we will face that at some point. We will grow older. So like reflecting back on your life, you're like, what have you achieved and what does life mean to you? It's extremely, I would say, like super provocative. And I said, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Yeah, I love the show. Yeah, the actor went on to go to Dexter. It's such a great, like you said, it makes you reflect. This whole time during the pandemic makes you reflect on different things where you have more time to do. We were talking off the air where I've been, with the exception of like going to work and maybe 4 total hours, I've been around my wife and family so much, and it just makes you appreciate things and makes you realize like, wait, I got to come up with a plan. What's our next move here? That sort of thing. But anyway, Andrew, I wanted to also talk about just the creative space in general, right? What have you noticed as some trends in the creative space, good or bad?
Yeah, I think going back to that theme of, I would say, self-reflection, and I would say, really knowing who you are and being self-aware. I think a lot of brands are really headed in the direction of really, I would say, unlocking or resurfacing their true north. And I think we've seen it with a lot of brands. We've seen it as of late with Burger King of stripping back, the color in their new logo and taking a different direction, going, because we're not, we everything that we put in here, we want to make sure is a reflection of our brand. The food that we provide you, all of that. So I think it's a lot of that of like stripping back the layers and going back to, who you are as a brand. And that's what I'm seeing in design and advertising.
Yeah, kind of, going back to their roots, simplifying. It doesn't have to always be, not everything has to be so flashy, right? It's like, oh, this is what this is about. Yeah, I've been seeing that. I read an interesting quote yesterday where it was kind of like, well, your brand is what other people were saying about it. Right. I kind of
Mhm.
got that where it's like sometimes people think oh, our brand is this, but to other people it could be it means something so differently. I just saw that on, maybe it was LinkedIn or something, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool quote. It was nice to see that in between all the Bernie Sanders memes that have been out there uh,
Well,
lately.
well, well, and I think that's like, it's almost like, if you take a look at America as a brand,
Mhm.
right? And there is some harsh truth to that. You go like the perception that people have of your brand, it comes from something. There's some truth to that. So what you do is, I always tell people, I go, how do you not mind the gap, but how do you bridge the gap? So if there is that gap in terms of perception versus your true north as a brand, how do you then go back to your roots and say, how do I, effectively tell this story, this narrative? I
Mm.
think in each person, each brand, each business, that's really effectively what people are trying to do, is tell a narrative that's authentically them, that's very brutally honest, and that's effectively understood and digested.
No, I agree. I like that. Andrew, I just want one other point. I wanted to get back to, being this marketing podcast. I wanted to understand a little bit about, you think IMAX, and I think obviously the experience, the theaters. Is your role or the company's role within marketing, are you marketing more to certain theaters to get your movies, or are you marketing to the clients, to the consumers like me, to go to those movies? Or is it the studios? Like, what's that? Who are you marketing to specifically?
Yeah, it's, I would say like marketing is so broad, right? Especially what we do within marketing at IMAX, it's so broad because, we truly do affect business and we play a very critical role. And especially within creative marketing, we play a critical role in terms of how we, create that narrative and how we really bring, how we bridge that gap, right? Between, humans or consumers and customers, and then what we're offering. And I think for us, what's so great about, I would say, the entertainment technology landscape, and in many other businesses, is there's very strong partnerships and relationships. I think for us, I wouldn't necessarily call it marketing with filmmakers. I would just call them building strong partnerships and going, IMAX is a great brand. IMAX has great cameras. IMAX has, this canvas, I would say, for filmmakers where they go, this is a playground for me to play on. I want to like play with your tools. I want to play with the gadgets that you have at IMAX. And I think separately, we then have partnerships with exhibitors and studios. It's a full ecosystem. The studios who we partner up with, they develop the content in terms of partnering up with filmmakers as well. And the exhibitors are basically the physical spaces in which we can on. And then I think ultimately, in terms of, like true, who are we really marketing to on a day to day is, I would say the moviegoers, and I would also say people who are fans of specific IPs, specific franchises, specific experiences. And I think there's also people who are technophiles. There's the cinephiles, there's the technophiles, because they are very interested. When they hear that there is a film shot with IMAX film cameras, they go crazy and they want to hear more. They go like, tell me more about that. Where can I see it? When can I see it? And I think, we've seen that some of those fans are, combinations of cinephiles and technophiles in one, or they are people who are interested in the franchises. So it's really broadened out over the past few years, I would say.
So, Vincent, I have to say, I'm surprised you watched 6 Feet Under. I thought you only watched bad dating shows. So
Yeah, bad dating. The Bachelorette's is not a bad dating show. It's 6 Feet Under is a piece of cinematic. That's a masterpiece. Yeah, the Bachelor Bachelorette. We got into it on this podcast here, Andrew. The Bachelor Bachelorette before, but yeah, I watch everything. It's like it's like the music I listen to. It's everything.
Yeah, well,
it was a great.
I think they're like on season 20, right? Like the Bachelor or the Bachelorette. It's really crazy.
I know. Well, it's one of those things that like my wife used to watch with her sister, but then her sister moved to Amsterdam or New Zealand. I don't even know where she lives now. But and then my wife was like, would you watch it with me? I'm like, oh, all right. You know what? Fine. Then I'm hooked. I'm like, you need to send her home. Get her out of there. Like it's, yeah, it's a guilty pleasure, if you will. And AJ,
he has many.
Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that.
I know. I have too many, but you've been watching some crazy shows lately, AJ.
Nothing I would admit to on the podcast.
No, I can't. I won't shout you out.
And Andrew, so just coming back to marketing, another question is we're always interested in how larger companies structure their marketing department. So can you just give us a sense of what some of the key departments are within marketing or key roles within marketing and how you guys handle all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're predominantly centralized in Playa Vista, which is called, considered Silicon Beach. Here in Silicon Valley and Silicon Beach here in California. And then I would say that's the central function of marketing, where you then have strategy and digital and creative and brand. Within my group, I have project management, operations, production. And then internationally, we then have our regional offices, who then I would say are multidisciplinary, right? They have relationships with studios. They also have relationships with exhibitors, and they work on everything that is product, brand, content campaigns. And, we work very closely with them. So I would say as a global network, we try to create this ecosystem where we're able to connect with one another on a day-to-day. So I would say, from a function standpoint, those are probably the main functions that we have within marketing.
And do you guys do is there advertising you do directly for the brand? Are you placing ads, or is it more kind of through your partners and theaters that the brand gets developed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it depends on what campaign we're running, right? I think we have this network of 1,600 plus theaters, and they're incredible partners, and there is incredible placements there, and we also have our own channels which my team produces a lot of content, a lot of, ads and pieces like that to go onto our social channels. And then I would say, there are other opportunities whenever we have opportunities with content campaigns with studios.
Do you remember kind of your first IMAX experience at a young age? I'm trying to think of mine while we're talking. I think certainly, back in '98 when the new Star Wars, like episode 1, 2, and 3 came out again. I remember that. I think I remember Gladiator in IMAX in 2000. I don't know if you remember, if you have a memory of your first one or two movies that you've seen.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point. Like you talked about, the Star Wars franchise, right? My first experience was, as going on a field trip as like a 9 or 10-year-old to the California Science Center and seeing,
yeah.
I believe, like a space documentary and sitting there and going, oh my gosh, this is gigantic. Like, like
sound.
you are immersed in it. And as a little kid who's like 4 feet or whatever height I was, you kind of go, oh my gosh, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
And to your point now, right? Like your eventually your kids, like when they do grow up and they're experiencing that in an IMAX theater, they're experiencing something different. Their first point of interaction with IMAX may not be in a museum. It may be, you know, watching, experiencing a blockbuster film.
That's right. Yeah, you remember like the planet Earth in IMAX. I mean, it's so much more than just like than a film. It's crazy. AJ, what was do you have a memory of kind of a film in IMAX? Did you take your oldest to IMAX yet?
No, what we've done is taken him to various kind of the natural history museum stuff, and it's too realistic for him most of the time. So he likes to go there, but then he'll close his eyes. But yeah, my first one of my favorite movies in IMAX that I particularly remember everybody wanted to really watch it on IMAX was The Dark Knight.
Oh yeah,
absolutely
insane, right?
Classic IMAX movie, I would say.
Christopher Nolan. Yep. Sorry, I wanted to ask that last question there. Go ahead, AJ.
So yeah, the other kind of staple question we ask, Andrew, is a lot of folks that are on the podcast get a lot of unsolicited emails and messages, especially on LinkedIn. So we always want to know, what is it that gets your attention, and what is something that really annoys you that people do on LinkedIn when reaching out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I find it's interesting because LinkedIn has evolved. You know, I always say like how Facebook has evolved. I remember when I first joined Facebook, you needed a .edu or @edu.com email address, right? And then now you don't. So, you know, and I find like through the pandemic, LinkedIn has evolved and it's become this great platform for connecting. I think for me, you know, I think number one is, you know, when I do receive friend requests where, let's say, there's a message that's attached to it that's relevant, that makes sense, I think that's probably the most powerful for me, right? I've had some one-off you know, engagements. I've like, you know, met Vincent and your great team, but you know, there was someone who I did meet who was looking to really understand, you know, how do I get into marketing as like a recent college grad? And I said, sure, let's spend some time. And I thought that was really, I said, if you're really interested, I'm more than happy to give you 30 minutes of my time, because if that can help shape and shift the direction that you're headed into, then that's really important. So I would say, you know, a friend request with a message in it that's relevant, that people, you know, want to talk about. I'm all about stimulating conversations and discussions. I'm all about, I would say, a friend request without anything, you know, makes it really challenging. And this goes back to, you know, perception versus the reality. They may have 100 connections, shared connections, but I don't really know to what, like, what does that mean, right? In today's age of connectivity and data and information. So I would say a friend request with a message that's relevant, I think is the most powerful.
Any marketing pet peeves or something that particularly annoys you? You seem like a very nice guy, so you may not have one.
I think this goes back to, you know, how do we simplify things and how do we not overcomplicate things? You know, I grew up in a household where my mom, you know, was a single mom, right? No siblings. And my mom always says, she's like, you are either the problem or the solution in life. So pick one. And so I think looking at that, I always look at, I would say, creativity and as a problem solver. And I think when people have fixed mindsets and they don't have growth mindsets, I think that's probably a pet peeve for me. I'm also the guy who, I never see the glasses half full and I never see the glasses half empty. I see the glasses overflowing. So I always tell people this. I'm like, I see the glass as overflowing because I think everything that you're challenged with is an opportunity. So I think, with marketing, I think we have to be in this growth mindset on a constant basis. And we have to understand that adaptability and getting ahead is really what we need in today's age, because you never know what's going to happen. Things transform around us, right? It's almost like the permanence of impermanence is what I always like to say it is.
And Andrew, we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted to talk to you about this because it is an organization that I was personally involved with, and you and I share together, is the Big Brothers Big Sister program. Talk to us a little bit about your involvement there. Wonderful organization, and I was part of it for 11 years and really enjoyed it. But love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's great to hear that you're a part of it for 11 years, because that is extremely long. When I first started looking into mentorship, I told myself, I said, I want to invest in something that I could see grow. Much like when I, joined Imax, I wanted to help grow a brand. I said, I want to invest in something that I can grow, right? And I felt like, because I had never had a father figure in my life, when I looked up, I ended up going with Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters here in Los Angeles, and I was paired up with my little brother Diego, who was 8 at that time. And when you've never had a kid, right? You both have kids. I was like, do you hold his hand when you cross the street? Do you like I said at 8, what happens at 8? Like, do I how cautious do I need to be, right? And now it'll be 9 years in February. And our relationship has evolved from, going bowling and doing arts and crafts to really shaping him for college. In the fall,
Wow.
he is the first of his family to apply to a 4-year university. And he's one child of 4. And he also transformed his grades from a 3.5 fall semester last year to 4.83
Wow.
this past fall semester. So I always say, sometimes you don't know what you don't know as a kid, and you just need guidance. And I'm sure for you, Vincent, you probably, learned that throughout the process as well.
Yeah, no, I did, Andrew, and I have an older brother and a single mother as well, and it was little things that, like, I say 11 years, but it was involving 2 little brothers. Like, one was almost, done with the program that I've kept in touch with, and then I was going down a path with another one who I actually went to high school with his mother. And
Wow.
it was, and that was Omari, and we went down that path. But little things that helped me become a better father, because you're right, when they're like, Omari was young, maybe 7 or 8, where I would take him out for like a breakfast, and he was having trouble eating pancakes, and I'm like, oh wait, I have to help him cut these pancakes, like little things like
Absolutely.
that you don't realize. But no, I think I've always been involved with community service, as well as AJ has as well during leukemia lymphoma. Recently, for the holidays, I put it on LinkedIn because I wanted to share a proud father moment. My son and I packed up packages for the homeless around here in New York City, and he was helping me put like little socks and this and that, and it just meant so much to me to do that. So thank you for sharing that story with us, Andrew, and your story. Lastly, we just have a minute or so. What have you been doing? What do you like doing for fun? I know you're amateur pie baking champion. I know you've been doing that. You just bought a house. Congratulations, my friend. But tell me a little bit more what you like to do. The pie thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. People always say, they're always like, I'm so surprised at you. And I said, why? And they said, because you find something and then you figure out how to do it, and then you go the whole 9 yards, right? Like, before pie baking, I started this pie baking thing in the summer, I would say, during the pandemic. And I had never baked a pie. I never did that. And then, for me, I always like to do things from scratch. So this isn't like buy a pie crust that's done, buy filling and then slap it on, buy whipped cream. Everything is by hand. And I probably made in total about 9 to 10 different pies, everything
Nice.
from blueberry pies to what I like to call oat almond oat banana cream pies to key lime pies. So I think that, I don't know, there'll probably be like a resurgence back during the holidays when we're all able to get back together. There's like this other fascination I have with plants, which I never understood. When I was little, I always walked into, homes of relatives, and I said, why don't people have flowers? I said, why do people always have green plants? And then now, it's kind of come back around. To your point, Vincent, you said things come back around, right? With the fade. Is with plants, I find them fascinating because you go literally one day, there's nothing there. The next day, it's a leaf.
Yeah.
And you go, how did that happen overnight? And I think there's some fascination for me of like things that just evolve and then they reach their maximum full potential. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. So I would say like plant, and I would say a lot of the things, the inspiration that I have with this new, when you buy a place, it's a house, and then you then transform it into your home.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the things that I'm really into right now is really taking a look at how do I transform that new physical place into a home that reflects, I would say, my travels, and how do I make sure like every inch of it is a part of who I am. So I would say those are a few, hobbies right now.
No, I love that. And then, like I said, I'm very, very happy for you that, you bought a home, and you're right. Maybe it's taking some of those photos from your travels and framing them. Maybe it's pieces that you purchased from those areas that you could kind of put up. But I love it. I love the story, Andrew. I love the time that you spent with us. And we appreciate you sharing your Imax story, your personal story as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Vice President of Global Creative Marketing, Andrew Almendras. I am Vincent Petrofessa. That's Ajay Gupta. Thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of The Marketing Stir. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like, rate, and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, email us at info@themarketingstir.com. And thanks for listening.